thanks for sitting down with me today.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like we see each other in different cities all the time, whether it's New York, Vegas, San Diego, Seattle, right? Just
most traveled friend.
There
really.
you go. Exactly. Well, I mean, for me, this is really special to sit down and obviously see how big and influential you are at this conference. I've heard a lot, obviously, about you. We've been sitting down with a lot of the HR advisors and just what's becoming of Bravely, like how much it's being positioned well in the market. So talk to me a little bit. I mean, I remember when we first met, right? It was like you guys had this awesome concept. Some of the product was like being built, but it wasn't all fully built. We were like, hey, let's hold a couple of months before we're even ready to come into the network. I guess talk to me about what attracted you to PeopleTech, and then like kind of how the influence of it has been.
Yeah. I think many of the best ideas for new, bold concepts and companies come from personal experience, and Bravely is no different. And the idea for it came from working in years in health tech and serving people with urgent care health needs with access to clinicians on demand, powered by technology.
Totally.
And one day I got this phone call from a friend who had had an argument with her boss and was having an urgent care moment at work. And I joked that she needed HR telemedicine. Didn't know anything about HR, about the people space. My co-founder Sarah thankfully does and has a decade of HR experience. But I think what PeopleTech did for me was round out like a decade's worth of industry experience in PeopleTech, all in like one concentrated few-month program where I got to meet. It was like a customer advisory board and like focus groups that cared about my success and taught me everything I needed to know and challenged my thinking and helped us shape the product, helped us shape how we talked about it. And so what a personal experience became was a real business and like a real understanding of the market that we had ahead of us.
Totally. And you had a kind of an interesting challenge. I was actually telling this story earlier in a conversation we had. I mean, I remember when we first got introduced, we talked and we're like, we want to be HR's friend, but we may be viewed in like an interesting light, right? And I remember taking it out. I was like, hey, would you guys be interested in working with Bravely? And then they all came back and said, that sounds really interesting. It's going to be a lot around positioning. So how has that happened? Like
100%. Like our early positioning was so antagonistic of an HR in a way that we didn't fully realize, to be honest. And we have always thought of ourselves as a new capability in the suite of what HR can do, and a partner to HR, augmentative to HR. Like that's really how we need HR teams there for our platform to be successful.
Totally.
We need to be able to help people think, get clarity of thought, get confidence, get what they need to go forward, and talk to HR, talk to great, well-trained managers. That's what the ecosystem is what makes it all successful. So I think early on we just did a terrible job at understanding the perception in the market and using the right language to convey what we really we really felt. And beyond the PeopleTech, the series of demos were super formative. And then there was this amazing meeting in New York with the PeopleTech partners all around one table, like 10 of them, and they ripped me to shreds. With a healthy amount of kindness, but they were like, this isn't working, we don't understand this, why are you doing it this way, this is how we think about that, and I couldn't take notes fast enough. And so I could point to 6 different ideas that came from that meeting alone that are now part of our core process, core positioning, and things that have really moved the needle for us. And without that kind of real-time feedback, again, from a place of care, and so you almost tell companies what you need to hear, not what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear, because you care about their success as an organization.
Absolutely. No, I remember that meeting, and it was so impactful. And I remember too, because you were hitting a little bit of a wall at that time. We're like, feel like we're getting this clarity here, people want it, but then they were still missing these things, and you came out of that and you're like, I think we just heard it and saw a lot of it. Another thing I think that came out of that was people suggesting, let us try it so we actually understand it, right?
Exactly.
What did that
so
work out
part of what we heard from the PeopleTech program was what is happening in a Bravely session? And we understood it intuitively from the employee experience, right? I have some sort of important moment at work that can be a conflict and reactive, or it can be proactive. I'm coming up on a performance review and I really want to ace that one-on-one. It doesn't feel big enough to go to HR, or I've had bad experiences with HR in the past, or my Uncle Bob is telling me don't trust HR. For whatever reason, I'm not going forward and getting the support that would really serve me in this moment. And so we've always understood the employee experience. But from the HR side, they were what is happening in these conversations, in these sessions? What's the methodology that drives it? How do you talk to employees about it? How do you protect us as a company? And we sort of realized, well, if HR people just did sessions, they would understand how complementary this is, how it supports supports the work that they're doing.
Absolutely.
So we started making that part of our sales process.
Yeah,
We'd start talking to HR leaders. We'd say, get your team to do sessions and share feedback with you on how it could help your people.
That's awesome.
So now every organization that has signed on to work with us, their HR teams are the biggest champions because they've done the sessions and they understand the value.
Amazing.
And including legal teams, right? We have general counsels in most of the companies we work with do sessions to understand how this could work within the legal protections they have for the company.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. That's and then I remember a lot of that was like coming out of that night. I think it might have been Jonathan Basker was like, "You gotta just let us try it, man." And you're like, "All right, try it."
They're joking marketing campaigns. It'll be like, target the spouses, right? Stop complaining to me or talking to me about work. I don't know how to help you. Go use it bravely.
Totally. Tell us about some of your favorite client stories right now.
We're now working with several companies in the Fortune 1000, really successly serving global teams and serving employees outside of offices, which has been really powerful for us. We work with a Fortune 500 restaurant brand that has 2,100 general managers of their different restaurants who are distributed all over the country, don't necessarily sit across the hall from a person that they can book a meeting with and talk to, and dealing with all sorts of difficult conversations on the ground while having P&L ownership of their restaurant and liaising with corporate. And so we've really found a lot of value and premium from them placing having access to a service and a platform like Bravely. And I think the biggest thing that we're most proud of in these rollouts is we drive a change in behavior. And that change in behavior is getting somebody to go forward earlier and in a more productive way than they would have otherwise. And 85% of people at Bravely sessions report that they're more likely to address a difficult situation or a stressful situation in the workplace.
Oh, that's cool,
And they report that those conversations are more productive than they think they would have been if they hadn't been able to prep on Bravely.
So you're tracking like before and after type stuff to be able to show the data.
We've now served thousands of employees across sessions, and being able to show conversations are happening earlier, they're happening more often, and they're happening in a more healthy way. And good culture is built on good conversations.
That's amazing.
And that's fundamentally what we're all about.
And you're able to bring that back and able to say, look, the proof is here, and it's making your company that much more effective.
And it's on us as a company, I think, to over time use the data that we have to tie that direct attribution to retention and engagement and productivity and all the things that it makes sense. Right? If people are having good conversations, it's not hard to extrapolate that. But that's the power of the technology piece in this is to really show using data what the impact that we're having, and also show themes and trends back to the report themes and trends back to the organization on the kinds of stuff that we're observing on
That's
the ground.
amazing, I mean, you're going to be able to put that all together. I mean, you already do, but in a nice package that really just helps people assess it, and they can tie those lines, obviously. Really cool. You hit on one other thing that's just coming up all over this conference, everywhere today. I mean, I think it was talked about last year, but now it's going crazy, is the remote and distributed side. And that was really interesting. Your tool actually is helping HR almost expand itself into all these places, because you're one video call away, right?
Totally.
So was that always your thought going into this, or has that become bigger than you thought it would be?
We saw, so every time we think about what value we could bring to an HR organization, it all starts with the employee, right? And so we started seeing these sessions early on from people who were not in HQ, right? Not in the core office, reporting how hard it was to understand why decisions were made, how hard it was to bring things up when things were going wrong, over Slack or on your, without the sort of personal rapport that comes from bumping into people in the kitchen or whatever. And so we were like, what is happening with the culture around remote teams? What does attrition look like for people who are distributed and don't have access to the same sort of core infrastructure and culture of HQ. And so that was where we learned firsthand that we could help companies solve for some of the people challenges where you can't afford to have a full-time HR person on the ground if you've got a small office. And Bravely extends that reach. It's almost like a workforce multiplier for your core team that helps people take advantage of the internal resources more effectively as well.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, again, and it's just hitting on such a trend in so many ways.
I mean, in some ways, what we hear from HR leaders, and obviously I get really excited about this, is I can't believe this didn't exist before. It just makes so much sense. Right? The idea of having the safety and privacy of talking to a friend or family member, but it's a professional and they're unbiased, so they can kind of challenge you and come from a place of neutrality and have you see every side of it. As friends, sometimes we just tell people what they want to hear to make them feel better. And that is a great thing for employees and a great thing for companies because it drives that change in behavior. So I think there's kind of oh shit, that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that should exist in the world. And again, PeopleTech helped us crack the code on how to talk about that.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. So one other thing I think you've done really well from PeopleTech, and you kind of just talked about it a second ago, but you're constantly here, you're in front of people, you're gaining relationships. I think one thing I see it becomes a little bit hard is people that try to just come in and say, oh, I should meet people once, and all of a sudden they're all going to be buying my product. I mean, talk about how you've been able to do that. How have you been able to develop genuine relationships outside of these, just individual meetings?
I find in particular that the HR community wants to understand the people they're buying from, why they're doing it, how they think about their product. Like, these are people problems that we're solving, so the people behind the solutions are super important. And like anything, it's all about cultivating trust and building a relationship over time. Even if people are really excited about your idea personally, they've got all sorts of stuff going on back in home base. They've got to navigate their finance team, their legal teams, their competing priorities, limited resources. So it's so important to stay in touch with them and try to understand what their problems are, how you can make it easier for them to try out your product. They all want to try before they buy and really understand. And it's just nothing worth it in life is one and done. And so if you really want to work with a great CHRO, a great head of people, you have to put in the time and you have to put in the effort. And honestly, even in this world of everything being tech enabled, I mean, Gradely is fully remote coaching, distributed virtual coaching. Nothing replaces face-to-face time. So if you can get on a plane, if you can be there when the PeopleTech partners are getting together and you can be in front of your customer, it's a different kind of conversation, a different kind of relationship that you can build. And you get out of it what you put into it.
That's awesome. Or even spend your birthday with us, right?
I spent my birthday last year with the PeopleTech partners.
Exactly. So what are your goals for the next 12 months as a company?
Yeah, I mean, as a company, we've grown up a lot, and we're now working with larger and larger organizations, supporting employees internationally and all sorts of different kinds of work environments. And the next chapter of the company is all about building more product that better serves that employee and drives all sorts of changes in behavior that we think are important for healthy cultures and healthy workplaces. We want to be a partner to HR in supporting employees to have the best experience that they can at their jobs. And again, we're just proud to be sort of a win-win for everybody in the equation.
That's awesome.